The Women of Ill Repute, with your hosts, Wendy Mesley and Maureen Holloway.
So, hey, Maureen, I got a bit of a confession to make. I'm not actually a sports fan.
No, I know that. I'm well aware of that. But you are sporty, but you're not a sports fan.
Well, I do like sports. I do sports. I'm just not very good at writing them or reading them or watching them or whatever.
Partaking of it.
Or anything.
Anything really.
But I do read Cathal Kelly. He's the sports writer for the Globe and Mail, even though I don't like sports.
But he doesn't just write about sports, and when he does, it's very compelling. He's a terrific writer. I'm reading his book, Boy Wonders, about growing up in Toronto and being a Star Wars nerd and digging a hole in his backyard and stealing car hood ornaments. It's hugely entertaining and it doesn't really have much to do with sports.
Yeah, it's like when you say it like that, it's a shocker to me. It hasn't been optioned, but yes,
Oh, so he's there. He's there. Hi, Cathal. We'll get to you in just a second. We have to properly introduce you.
Well, as much as
anyway,
we can.
We wanted to talk about the. We've got you on because we want to talk about the Paris Olympics, which are coming up end of July.
More like the impending Olympics, because according to a lot of people, including Cathal, they could be a disaster.
Yeah, but he says they might not be. So anyway, so that's the thing about writing about sports. You never really know what's going to happen. You can't do a play-by-play, as Cathal has learned. Well, not that he was ever going to anyway, but you sort of have to write predictively.
Unless you're writing about the Maple Leafs, in which case, you know what's going to happen, right? And Cathal is the scourge of the Leafs, I would go as far as saying.
Well, and he's everybody's scourge, which is why we love him. So to talk about sports, and not just that. Hi, Cathal. How are you?
Good. How are you both?
Disorganized. Good. We're really disorganized today, but we're going to get it together. We're really happy to have you on. And just for the listener to know, we're going to talk Olympics. They haven't happened yet, but maybe by the time you're hearing this, they will be on or have happened. So it'll be, and I think this is a good analogy about writing about sports in general, is you don't know what's going to happen, but you have to speak about it with authority.
That's true. You're almost, you're shooting for 50-50. The best saying I got when I started the columnist end of it was, never be afraid to be big and never be afraid to be wrong. Which is not to say you're trying to be wrong, but you just have to accept that you often will be.
Yeah, so why sports? I mean, you could write about anything and I'd read it, obviously, because I wasn't raised by a dad and didn't have a brother, and so I did not inherit sports because there was no, so they were just, I was raised by a feminist, so there were no like girl team sports to watch. So I don't read sports, but I read you. Why did you pick sports?
Why does Wendy read you? It's our first real question.
Well, you've kind of described my family life. I didn't have a father either, and my mother was not sporty or interested in sports and still isn't, and was also a strident feminist. Why sports? Because sports offers you the most freedom to write in the newspaper, I think. It's often regarded as the least important part of the paper, and it is the least important part of the paper, but it can also be the most fun part of the paper. So that's why I wanted to do it.
Yeah, you're so full of, everything is so full of heart, and it's like, it's brave. Like I think in the intro we called you a scourge, but you are a scourge. You scourge everybody.
Yeah, I
Equal opportunity.
I try my best to scourge without ever being too personal. These are people after all, but I mean, they're paid a ridiculous amount of money to be entertainers. These are really the only important cultural figures in our society anymore, I'm convinced of. There's always exceptions that prove the rule. There's the Taylor Swifts and the J.K. Rowlings, but other than that, people aren't particularly interested in musicians anymore. They're not particularly interested in writers anymore, at least the vast majority of people, the monoculture. But they are still, the numbers would suggest, deeply interested in athletes and what they do and what they say and how they behave and what they wear. I mean, these are the people, they're our aristocrats.
I would agree. So I am surrounded by sports fans. I have 2 sons and my husband, and they're sports mad, but especially hockey mad, and therefore heartbroken on an annual basis. Well, let's touch on the Leafs, who put in a disappointing, yeah, who had a disappointing year yet again. I mean, we did want to have you on. We will get to the Olympics, but let's just touch on this as briefly as necessary.
Or for as long as you like. I do love the Leafs.
You love the Leafs, and I love the Leafs too, but I hate the Leafs.
Yeah, what's the obsession?
The obsession is the losing. The losing is the secret. The worst thing the Leafs can do. I remember saying this to the now president of the Toronto Maple Leafs when he got the job, Brendan Shanahan, that the worst thing you could possibly do is win a Stanley Cup. It would be really great if you built up to that and maybe got to a few and then fell short. But I am convinced at this point, my guide on this is the Chicago Cubs, who until quite recently hadn't won a World Series in a century and were the most fascinating and most fascinated. People were most interested team in baseball. People love their loserdom. They love their spirit in the midst of disaster. As soon as they won a World Series, it was about a week of celebrations, and now nobody gives a damn about the Chicago Cubs. Nobody talks about them. Nobody cares, really. The losing is the thing. Any kind of streak like this. Somebody once said to me, a gallerist I know, who said, in art, if you do the same thing for 20 years, you're a hack. And if you do it for 40, you're a genius.
Well, that's my career.
that's what the Leafs are. The Leafs are professional losers.
So Maureen or I could be the coach of the Leafs. No problem.
You could. I'm convinced anybody could coach the Leafs at this point.
Why would anybody want that job, though, honestly? Well, I mean, because it's a hugely high profile, and, if one day somebody is going to be the coach of the Maple Leafs, the Stanley Cup winning, maybe not in our lifetime.
Yeah, it's like, it's somebody wants it to no longer holds true, but somebody, when Mike Babcock came to coach the Leafs, that's almost a decade ago, God. Jeez. When he came to coach the Leafs and, he was riding high, he was the greatest coach in the world at the time, that this franchise destroyed his reputation. And when someone asked, I talked to someone else and I said, why would he do it? Like when he has all these choices and they said, that opening reel on a Hockey Night in Canada where they had the montage and Scotty Bowman and he goes, he wants to be on that opening reel, and there's only one way to do it.
Yeah.
And it's to win with the Leafs. Too late for him.
Not going to happen.
You're wearing glasses, and in the Globe, you're wearing glasses, and you look sort of very intellectual and reading your book. So, you're like
you're so easily taken in, Wendy.
Yeah, seriously. It's mostly just blind. That's what it is.
So talk about the books, and if anyone's watching on YouTube or whatever, you're not only wearing glasses, you have books in the background, so you're very intellectual, obviously. But reading your book, you'd love taking the piss out of people, like physically taking the piss out of people, like punching them in the face.
Well, that's a long time ago. That's
so it's been a while?
It's been a long, long time. Yeah, I'm not sure if I got knocked down now I'd be able to get up. And it's not a function of the will to fight. It's just my knees. I don't know. That was a long time ago. It was a different world.
So you're an intellectual now?
I was never an intellectual, and I'm not one now. But I do like to read.
Do you? There's something about you and your writing that reminds me of George Plimpton, who was another person who wrote about sports but could write about anything. In fact, was I guess the term's used too often, but a Renaissance man.
Yeah.
But scrappy as hell.
Yeah.
At the same time, and also managing to be quite patrician. And who is he an influence on you at all, or like?
And while I really like everything he did in the Paris Review, I'd never read any of his sports books.
Really?
No, I don't think I've ever I've only really read a handful of sports books in my life, and mostly for work, mostly because I had to. I certainly didn't read them growing up. I read a lot of Sports Illustrated. I loved the writerliness of that magazine at the time, which is now gone.
Yeah, it was all about the articles, apparently.
Yeah, like Rick Riley and Frank DeFord, and it really was all about the articles. And the swimsuit issue destroyed that magazine.
Yes, I agree. First of all, swimsuit wearing is not a sport.
No, difficult.
It is challenging to wear a swimsuit, but it's not a sport.
It's like pool or darts. It's difficult, but it's not a sport.
It's more of a craft. I'm not sure. All right, so we're heading into the Olympics. Read an article of yours, I think back in March, where you pretty much said it's got disaster written all over it. But maybe not.
Yeah.
But maybe.
They all do. I mean, that is the beauty of the Olympics. It always seems like it's impossible to pull off, and that something terrible is going to happen. Uh, but I don't think so. Not at this one. I think that there's too much money involved. Generally speaking, when someone spends an awful lot of money on something, it tends to work out because too many people's careers are at stake. But I mean, this could be the first fun Olympics in quite a while. That's
Why fun?
because the last few have been terrible. I was thinking about it today before I came on to talk to you that if you think of the golden age of the Olympics, which is roughly coincides with our lives, which is like 1984, the LA
That's when we were
Olympics,
born, yeah.
yeah, and then 2012 London Olympics. That's the
Mm.
last great Olympics. Then you get the Sochi Olympics, the Chidi Olympics, and then you get the Pyongyang Olympics, Pyeongchang Olympics.
Pyeongchang, yes.
I really don't want to get that one wrong. And then it goes wobbly in COVID. This is the first one that everybody's going to be at, that everybody's excited for, in a city people are excited to see it in. I have high hopes for it, but I think the potential for disaster, especially with what's going on in the world, is high. And I think those stories will dominate. Like it will be the first time an Israeli is in a judo match with an Iranian. What happens there? Those are the kind of things people are going to really be watching for.
It's fascinating when they first announced them, which was when I first paid attention because I'm at the National. I used to work at CBC and was a reporter, and everybody used to fight to cover the Royals and the Olympics. And I was like, no, you go. It's fine, honestly. But you love the Olympics. So the last article I read about the Olympics was near the beginning, and it said that everyone was going to be swimming in the Seine, and that. So really, are they going to be swimming in the Seine?
There's going to be events in the Seine, maybe.
But it's kind of polluted, isn't it?
Well, they've been cleaning it up for the last, with the Olympics being the goal.
I don't understand how you clean a river. It's moving. It's like, so whatever's polluting the river is still coming. Like, so where are you going to get the pollution? And if it was that simple, wouldn't you do it anyway?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm sure we've all stood over the Seine. Like, it doesn't look great to me.
Yeah,
but I think it's a giant sluice gate of some kind, and yes, people used to swim in the Seine all the time, and that's the plan, was to have the water events on the Seine. Some of the other issues that you brought up that about Paris is the balcony situation with everybody coming out on balconies, and also the bouquinistes, the booksellers. They were supposed that line the river. They told them to go away, and the French were like, no, c'est absurde. So these are all particular Parisian problems that may or may not affect the ceremonies and the competitions.
And as of this week, they've added in an election into the mix, which will be
election.
If it wasn't complicated enough, they'll be deciding whether they want to swing fascist in the middle of the Olympics. So,
yeah,
it's very French. You have to admit,
it is very French.
Maybe there'll be a strike.
Oh, that's very French.
Yeah, absolutely. No train will work ever.
But getting back to the nature of the Olympics, it's an odd thing because you can't avoid politics, and the Olympics have always been reluctantly a stage for whatever international disputes are going on. And it's frightening. This one in particular, this particular summer, is a very frightening time to bring certain countries together. Would you?
Yes.
Are you going?
Yes. Yeah, I'll be there. I mean, to me, this is the whole point of the Olympics. Am I worried about it? No, not in the least. I always think these places, any place with an iron cordon that's, everybody's second guy's got a machine gun, I feel fairly safe in. But it's the
unless
people
you're caught in the crossfire.
It's the people just on the outside of that iron cordon I'm a little worried about. No, I'm not worried about that. This is the purpose of the Olympics. The purpose of the Olympics isn't sports. The purpose of the Olympics is getting all the countries in the world that really hate each other together in friendly competition and forcing them to be sportsmanlike. That is its only function. Once it loses that function, it loses its rationale.
And will they?
I mean, that's really in the balance now. They were put in a terrible situation after the Beijing Olympics, where after Russia invaded Ukraine in the small interim between the Olympics and the Paralympics, where they had to decide either they were going to eject Russia from the Paralympics or they were going to not have a Paralympics because the other countries wouldn't compete. I think in retrospect, they probably made the wrong decision. to eject Russia because they don't have a legal mechanism to do it. They just decided to. And in doing that, they prove that political pressure can be brought to bear on the Olympic movement to do things that they say they're against. So I think that pressure will continue here.
So give us a hint. What are you going to write about? I mean, you're going to
Well,
go there and think about it and write what comes to you. But what are the stories that are interesting? Is it the politics of it?
The politics of it is part of it. Yeah, I think you have to let that play out and see how people, the athletes will surprise you. I think that's what makes it so fascinating. These aren't state level actors. They're not prime ministers and presidents. They're not diplomats. They're just like 23-year-olds who happen to be good at weightlifting. And so they're getting to decide which way their country bends in that point, because everybody's going to get behind them or against them, regardless of what they do. So they get to decide, like, really, it's the rare instance where a 20-something track star can decide the political direction of a given country for the next couple of weeks and force the leadership of that country to react to whatever they do. So are they going to use that power? Do they feel empowered to do it? I'm not sure. I certainly wouldn't do it if I was from a country where you're likely to end up in jail when you go back, but people still do.
What about Team Canada? Who should we be? Is there anybody in particular or any team in particular that we should get excited about?
I think the two teams people will be most excited by, the individual athletes, they'll surprise you. Those are always the best stories. When someone nobody talked about, like Penny Oleksiak at the Rio Olympics, everybody does, 10 to watch, 20 to watch. She wasn't in any of those lists, and then she was the star of that games. So those are always the best stories, the ones you don't see coming. But the ones you do see coming in this one would be the women's swim team, which will probably represent the lion's share of Canada's medals, and probably the men's basketball team, if only because they're now hitters in what is those athletes in that tournament are the best known athletes of any of the Olympians. So, they get to slug with the Americans. That's Canadian Olympics is basically about beating America. If we can do that a couple of times, everybody's satisfied. Nobody cares if it's you beat the best Romanian, at whatever. Nobody cares about that. They just want you to beat America.
It's so true.
Yeah.
We tend to excel at the Winter Olympics for obvious reasons. We're a winter country. I fear for the Winter Olympics. Mostly to do with climate change, that the winter sports are not accessible or becoming less and less so.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's something that's constantly mentioned. They have to move. What they seem to be doing bizarrely is going to warmer climates in order to do it, and then just bioengineering the climate. As long as people want to do it, that's going to be the other problem. You can always find a summer Olympics because everybody wants everybody has a big stadium. Everybody wants to build a huge swimming pool that will attract a lot of people. But people don't really want to build ski jumps because they're useless and they cost an absolute fortune. And at the Sochi Games, got a guy killed because the guy who was in charge of building it ended up dead. But that is going to be their problem going forward, I think, is finding locales. Increasingly, the next Winter Olympics is set. It's in Milan Cortina, but the one after that isn't, despite the fact that they have summer games planned beyond it. So they're having real trouble.
Do they ever come here? I mean, every year there's a backlash. I mean, there was
Toronto's bid several times, and of course they were in Montreal and Calgary and Vancouver. But that raises a good question: do we want an Olympics? We seem to, but
I don't. But you probably do.
I mean, should we have an Olympics? I say as a taxpayer, absolutely not. It's ludicrous. It's a money suck. And Toronto and Vancouver are getting a little taste of that now with the World Cup coming. It's one price when you get sold it. And then it's like so many things you buy these days. When you get to the cash, it's a quite different price on a big ticket item. There was talk more than talk, there was a prospective bid for Calgary to get that Winter Olympics. And Calgarians said, no, no chance. We're not paying for that again. And they're quite right, I think.
If it's okay, I'm going to go back to the book because I was just really struck by two things that you were influenced by Morrissey. We don't need to have a discussion about him anymore, but the music is great.
It's tremendous.
And George Orwell. But both of them, they're both quite similar in that they say that most of us will never accomplish our dreams, and
Yeah.
yet you're still writing. Like, you still have these dreams. You haven't like lowered your expectations for writing. So I'm just wondering how you sort of balance those two.
Oh, wow, that's deep. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
I
very deep.
like,
Sorry, did I snort out loud?
yeah. We kind like, I was raised in, I was fortunate enough to be raised in a deeply cynical time.
Hmm.
And I think that's such a huge advantage. Um, because you don't expect much. I didn't expect much. Like, this is not to say I thought it would be disastrous. I just didn't think it would be exceptional in any way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
And I was perfectly happy with non-exceptional. I used to have these little conversations with myself as a kid about how much money I needed. And it wasn't to do any particular thing. It was just to live. Like, how much money would I need to live? And I decided at the time, and this is back when minimum wage was like $4. I decided it was $40,000 a year. If I could make $40,000 a year, I would be set. Everything would be great. It never extended to what would I do? What did I want to be? None of those things. I just wanted to make $40,000 a year, and I would have done it like picking garbage if I had to, if that's what it took. And when you start out with that, like, I mean, I think we do, uh, it sounds so weird to say, young people, we do them such a disservice now when we say, follow your dreams. Don't follow your dreams. Your dreams are probably either inaccessible or incredibly stupid. You probably shouldn't follow your dreams. Your dreams are to be, I don't know, on the cover of Vogue. Your dream is to be, I don't know, the president of something. Don't bother with that dream. Just try to be happy. Find something you're good at, reasonably good at. Doesn't have to be anything terribly sexy, and just try to be happy. And the things that are going to make you happy, your job is like not the top of that list. The people around you will be the things that make you happy. Your interests will make you happy. You can't expect your job to make you happy, because it's every once in a while going to make you deeply, deeply unhappy. That's just the nature of a job. So yeah, I didn't have any of that. I get to do something. I don't even like talking about it. That's why I'm dancing around the subject. I feel so lucky that I feel like the rug is coming out anytime now. I've been waiting for many years for the rug to come out. So yeah.
We all
What
feel
could,
that way. Imposter syndrome is the most common thing you'll find in anybody who's in does what we do. We all
what,
think, how can I be making a living at this? By the way, just to note on that 40,000, apparently 70,000 is the magic number
Yeah, but you still
today.
can't buy a
yeah,
house.
that's right.
Not
Still can't
no,
buy.
you can't.
Crazy.
But then why buy a house? I mean, 70,000, and let's leave Toronto out of the equation, or New York,
Yeah.
or London. But 70,000 should be enough for someone to live comfortably, reasonably well. So your 40 wasn't too far
I
off if you
remember
adjust
asking
for
my mother,
inflation.
here we go with mothers again, how much do rich people make? And she said $10,000.
10,000 per annum? Like, that's what she
Well, I
thought.
don't know. It was a long time ago.
$10,000, I mean, maybe a day, and who knows? Cathal, it's interesting that you say, and I think it's really good advice about just find something you do reasonably well and concentrate on being happy. But coming from you, seeing as how you deal with and talk to and interview and write about people who are living their dreams.
Yeah.
So I guess you're
So there are
suggesting that,
dreams.
but maybe they're not that happy. In fact,
I,
maybe they live under crushing pressure.
that's absolutely true. I think in many cases, I don't think athletes is my general impression of them. And as a reporter, you don't know them. Like, I mean, you don't know them at all. Like, I mean, anybody who presumes to think that they have some insight into the mind of, other than just sort of creating a general consensus over years of talking to people and hearing kind of the same things, you get the real stuff from much older athletes. But when they're in it, not at all. They're the least thoughtful people in the world, because thoughtfulness is anathema to what they do. So you won't find an athlete sitting around thinking about, I really made it. They don't think that way. They think they were destined for it. And most of them are laser beams. Like, I mean, they don't have much of a personal life. They don't have, despite the fact of what you might see on the internet, because I mean, they're no different from 1,000 other people, 1,000 other 20-year-old men and women who are probably just as talented, just as physically gifted, and may even work as hard. But these ones have that special sauce, that obsessiveness that has pushed them over the edge. And I think most of them are terrified of thinking about it and don't really realize how good it was until it's gone.
So they're
Kind
all
of sad.
really,
It's kind
really
of sad.
unhappy.
It
So
is.
No,
please
this
tell
is
us
not.
they're
I
unhappy as
think
they're raking in the millions.
no. I don't think happiness or unhappiness comes into it. They're purpose-driven tools. They just do one thing really, really well. And I don't think it's any different from a great writer or a great dancer. Afterwards when they do the biographies of these people, how often do they turn out to have been incredibly content and just as talented in every other area of their lives, and had really happy interpersonal relationships and really, really normal families. And it's not often the case. Usually these are the people who come from exceptional circumstances, and often those are exceptionally bad.
Hmm.
Do you
So
have
you're
children, Cathal?
I do not.
Ah, okay. If you
you
did,
write
would
so much about
All
your mom and dad, though. It's kind of
it's
well,
different.
your dad was a complicated person who left, had a mental illness, drank too much.
that's the euphemism now. Complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all come from complicated
That's
backgrounds.
yeah.
I mean, try and
Nobody's bad anymore. They're complicated.
that's right.
Well, your mom was complicated too, but
Yeah,
you loved her or love her. Is she still alive?
she is. She's still kicking. She's still terrifying.
So what's next? I mean, your book was called Boy Wonders. So it sort of ends when you're 17 or 18 or whatever the threshold of adulthood is now. I have no idea. But are you going to write another one? So you write.
I do. I don't know what I would write now.
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, there's lots of things I'd like to write. I'm not sure I'd want to publish a book. I don't, as anybody who's written a book knows, and I know, and I'm not just basing this on my experience, I'm basing it on a lot of people I know. But you write books for yourself. Like, you don't write books. There's no money.
No.
There's less than zero money in it for the vast majority, and it's kind of like it's a process that will drive you mad. I'm not really good at I'm not really good at planning or I'm good at deadlines, but I'm not good at mapping things out. I do everything in a great panic. That's why a newspaper is perfect for me. I just have one day to do something. I don't if they gave me 3 months to do a column, I would write it the hour before it was due, which is basically how I wrote the book. So I don't know that you're doing it for yourself, and I think it'd have to be something people want me to write sports books. But I have no
I
interest.
think people want you to write anything, honestly. Speaking for myself and Wendy.
Well, Maureen, when you start the imprint, give me a call.
I got to get my own act together, but I'll let you know. We are, and I have to ask, we are 2 games into the finals, and the Oilers have lost both. What do you have any predictions?
I'm just going to go with the odds. If you're down 2-0, I don't know exactly what those odds are, but they're very poor.
Why can't we have nice things? Why can't we have nice things?
Once again, I think it's a little different than the Leaf situation, but I think Canada really digs this now. Like, this is something to talk about. When Canada gets together at whatever Thanksgiving dinner together, and they really have nothing, Alberta has nothing to say to Nova Scotia. This is the one thing we can all talk about. Why are we so bad at hockey despite being so good at hockey? And were we to overcome it, just one team, I don't know what our next move is, our next conversational move.
I love this. This is this sort of the advantage of being negative, the power of negativity.
Yeah. It is. Disappointment is a powerful teacher. And disappointment, you can't be consistently disappointed. That destroys you. But you need to be disappointed every once in a while. You can't have everything you want. And we're, I think, beginning to understand that getting anywhere close to having everything you want is disastrous for most people.
But that's a dream too. So we've decided we're going to write a new book because Maureen and I
want you to.
Yeah, let me know. I'm good at. I won't say good. I don't have a problem with the writing. It's the conception of ideas I'm not the greatest at.
So speaking of ideas, are you still obsessed with style? Because when you were a kid, it was all mohawks and Michael Jackson jacket.
As you can see, there's a
you do what you can.
You mean you're bald?
Yeah, that's just
it works.
The mohawk is probably the reason I am bald. You wouldn't believe what I put into that thing.
Glue.
Just worse than glue.
Yeah.
Just awful stuff. Do you remember French formula?
Yes.
But I'm not bald.
No, I mean,
What
you
is
know,
the French formula?
yeah, French formula was like a hairspray that came out, and it was so heavy it would
Yeah.
actually be dropping on. You remember you had to do it over a counter because it would
Yes.
be like the
Yes.
stuff would be globbing on the counter as it came out. It
I
was
had,
literally like carpenter's glue. I
yeah.
put so much of that in my hair. Like, there's no doubt.
There's no doubt that's what
But
happened.
I mean, the good thing is my brother, who never did anything crazy with his hair, he's also bald. So
Ah, well.
that was a good thing to find out. It's not just me. It's not all me.
You
But
wear
yeah,
it well, though. You know,
you,
you have a
you're very
nicely shaped head.
yeah, I have no choice. Yeah.
Well, you
Well,
do, but don't
in your
make that
book, you
choice.
have lists, and I think one of them is whatever happened to the aerosol spray can?
I
Remember
know.
those? Oh my God,
Those
with
were
the deodorant with the psh,
I
but
know.
yeah,
something to do with
it's
acid rain or
No,
something.
the ozone
so
layer.
Oh,
ozone
that's
layer.
what it was.
But we fixed the ozone layer, so it's time to bring back the aerosol
Yeah,
can.
I guess.
And French
Um,
formula.
Speaking of bringing people back, I'd love to talk to you at the end of I'd like to talk. What's the opposite of predictively? When you look back on something
Deep.
and see how the
Retroactively.
retroactively, thank you,
Retrospectively.
retrospectively
Yeah.
about the Olympics and the Stanley Cup finals and all those things. Basically, I think we'd just love to have you back. It's been such a
You're very
pleasure
good.
talking to you.
Oh, it's been so great talking to you guys.
Yeah, well, I guess this is how we wrap up, but we don't say that to everybody, honestly. So,
We don't.
yeah.
It's true. Thank you so much for joining
Yeah,
us.
yeah, thanks,
Enjoy the
Paul.
Olympics. Stay off the balconies.
Thanks so much for having me.
Look at us talking sports with Cathal Kelly.
Yeah, and I didn't pretend. I was going to say I pretended I loved the Olympics, but I don't.
You
But
don't?
there's still no,
You
I
don't?
No,
You
I don't.
really don't.
I don't
I
watch them.
love them.
I know most people do. Most people love all the things that
The
you love.
pageantry and the competition and the beautiful young people and what's not to like?
Well, this year it's in Paris, but I'm kind of over my Paris thing. So I'll watch if the balconies all fall off and
Watch for the disasters. Well, that's I think that's something that Cathal really brought to light is that it's not about sports. It's as much about politics, and that's the undercurrent, for better or for worse, that runs under everything. I was in Montreal for the Montreal Olympics, and it was and I was like a 14-year-old underage drinker. But
that's
it was
one
the
with
best.
Magic Komenich, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
I remember.
Yeah. Were you there?
That was the last time I watched.
But you weren't there. Where were
I
you?
wasn't there. No,
In 76. Were you? Where were you? No, you
no,
were
I was
here.
in Toronto. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I grew up in Toronto.
It was so much fun. And the city, well, as Cathal said, some places have great Olympics, like the London Olympics were considered a huge success. And the Montreal Olympics were, and maybe the Vancouver ones to a certain extent. So we'll see how these go. I hope nothing bad happens. And I'll be watching, and you won't. And that's c'est la guerre, as they say in Paris.
Women of Ill Repute was written and produced by Maureen Holloway and Wendy Mesley, with the help from the team at the Sound Off Media Company and producer Yet Belgraver.